So yeah, we're dipping back into the Dhammapada, and I know that Woke House has its kind of own feel to it, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't trying to at least teach the Buddha Dharma to you guys, since y'all are going through all the trouble of getting here. And like I said, several people said they couldn't be here today, but I've also gotten a lot of emails recently from people that are interested in coming. So we're starting at the very beginning of Buddhism, which is called the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and that's what the Dhammapada is a part of. And there's supposedly 3 turnings of the wheels of Dharma, and what that means is when Buddha first became enlightened, the first thing that he taught the first group of people, that's the first turning wheel of the Dharma. And then years later, people had insights and visions and like downloads of a different type of Buddhism. And then they said that was the second turning. It was almost like the cosmic Buddha was giving them these downloads, and they were writing it down. So the physical Buddha, he taught the Dhammapada, and that was the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, and it goes into a collection called the Nikayas. And so you have Theravada, which this is a part of, and that's the tradition of the elders. So that's when Buddha was in his body. Then after Buddha it's called a parinirvana, or he passed away, years and years later, the second turning of the wheel was just like downloads from the cosmic Buddha. And then much later, it got into more of a kind of Vajrayana, which is the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, which is even a different type of Buddhism. And what it is, it goes from the first turning of the wheel was very much about seeking enlightenment for yourself. The second turning of the wheel of Dharma was very much about helping others and compassion and seeing that all of us wake up together. And then the third turning of the wheel is just very mystical, very like visions. There's different exercises involved. There's mantras. There's visualizations. It's very esoteric, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So this says the Dhammapada is a collection of sayings of the Buddha. They were probably first gathered in northern India in the 3rd century before Christ, and originally written down in Sri Lanka in the 1st century before Christ. Yeah, that's right. And the Dhamma means law, justice, righteousness, discipline, truth, and Pada means foot or path. So the Dhammapada means the way of the Buddha, the path of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. Okay? And so, because we've already dove in a little bit into the verses, I wanted to read to you quickly the foreword to the Dhammapada. And the foreword in this book was written by a guy named Ram Dass. And Ram Dass practices Hinduism and not Buddhism. And he's actually what's called a bhakti yoga. And so bhakti yoga is dedication and compassion to your lama or your teacher. So the preamble says, or the foreword says, "Here are the sayings of the Buddha, the enlightened one. Had you but ears to hear, these very words could awaken you, and through them you could realize your own Buddha nature. These words come out of divine simplicity. To liberate, they must be heard with simplicity. These words come from the soul, to feed that in you which thirsts. These words, which are words of wisdom, not knowledge, must be heard by the soul, not the intellect. For that which feeds only the intellect entraps, while that which feeds the soul liberates. And it is the soul that thirsts for truth. The intellect thirsts only for its own fabrications. A transmission of truth is poured from one vessel into another. If you, as a vessel, are impure in body, heart, and mind, the truth cannot be contained. What is pure becomes impure. The power of truth is too much, and the cup is smashed. The transmission is lost, and we continue walking darkness. In your lifetime you have heard thousands of words such as those contained in this volume. The words of Christ, the words of Lao Tzu, the patriarchs of Zen, of Rumi, of Kabir, of Saint Teresa, of John, of Solomon and Abraham, of Muhammad and Krishna, and the Vedic rishis, words that bespeak secrets of the universe. But how few have you received? How many transmissions have you lost again and again because you are not ready to hear them? It is sufficient preparation, having purchased this book, to sit in a comfortable chair to make your... Is it sufficient to read this book in a comfortable chair and make light of your reading, like you would read a magazine or a novel? Or to move slowly through it as you would a book of poetry? Is that the way you prepare to hear the word of the Buddha, of the Christ of Lao-Tzu? Is that the way you prepare yourself to sit before a holy man and receive that jewel which could possibly liberate you from thousands of lifetimes on the wheel of birth and death? Were you going to meet the Buddha, might you not bathe in the river to make your body clean? Might you not come bearing gifts of fruit? Might you not sit with the wind and the trees and the heavens until your mind is calm? Might you not acknowledge the suffering of your fellow beings with an open heart and give alms? Might you not come forward and bow deeply in humility and surrender? Would these not be suitable preparations for receiving the great truths? And when you heard the words, would you not set aside judging and allow the words to caress your being, to play with your consciousness as a gentle stream plays with your body? Its healing waters wash away the tensions created by modes of who you are or how you think it's supposed to be. Imagine the Buddha were on earth at this moment, somewhere in India. And I often heard preachers also talk about the faith in Christ, of having Christ walk off the pages of the Bible into your actual heart. You know, I know that a lot of times we profess what we believe with our mouth, but it's not actually down deep in our hearts, you know. And I think when I was living a Christian life, I had the duality of praying for something, but then not trusting God was actually going to do his part. And so there was always this battle in my heart. I said I believed, but as soon as I prayed, I went right to doubt. Like, God's not going to do that for me. God's not going to be able to whatever, you know. So Ram Dass is saying that when we hear the teachings of the Buddha, visualize that he's here on earth now, sitting before us, you know, preaching and teaching. We're hearing his actual words right now in the present moment. And then he goes on to say, imagine Buddha's in India right now, and you set out on a pilgrimage to receive a teaching from him. Perhaps you might arrive in a village such as Sarnath, where rumor has it that Buddha is discoursing daily in Deer Park. But there they say, no, it's too late in the season. The Buddha has gone north to the mountains. And so you set out, sometimes traveling by ox cart, more often by foot, day and night, week after week, from village to village, asking at each tea shop for news of the Buddha. Yes, he was here but a week ago, but he has gone east. Yes, he was here 5 days ago, but he went to the village towards the north. A word here, a gesture here, and you know you're getting closer. Excitement of anticipation of meeting the Buddha becomes unbearable ecstasy. As you get closer, you can tell from the light in people's eyes and the light in their faces that they have touched the nectar of his teachings. Each wants to tell you of their experience with the Buddha, his grace, how he walked, how he talked, how he smiled. And you're reminded of the gopis that worship Krishna, and how Krishna has certainly traveled through this area before. As you get closer, the joy in anything other than meeting the Buddha becomes pale. You are single-minded in your determination. Even food and rest now are of no use. And finally you come to the spot on the path where the women in shawls who tend the sheep point and say, yes, Buddha is on top of that hill. Quickly you bathe, and then you offer, and then with your offering in hand you rush up the hill, stumbling over rocks and shrubs. But you care not for your feet, because you are about to meet a holy man. The landscape has taken on an unnatural radiance. Your body shakes, your breath becomes fast, and there under a tree sits the Buddha. perfectly sitting in tranquility. You prostrate, stretching out completely before him 3 times, and you offer your gift of fruit for the teaching. With the slightest nod of his head, the Buddha motions for you to sit before him. You have been accepted. Seated with the Buddha, you are out of time, out of space. You feel only this moment, the breeze on your cheeks, the dog barking in the distance. It is as if the world has stopped. After some time, the Buddha looks at you and says, "We are what we think. All that we are rises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make this world." He continues to speak a few more words. Each word burns into your soul, for these are the keys to your liberation. These words are both the gold of one journey and the beginning of the next. After more silence, he motions for you to leave. Again you bow and go your way. But how many campfires and how many meditation rooms and how many times in your life will these words feed you anew? These precious words so dearly obtained. But more than words, the boundless space, the simplicity, the compassion, the peace from which the words spring, in your head you hold a book of the sayings of the Buddha. Reading them slowly, a phrase at a time, let them feed your soul. I wish you the purity of mind, body, and heart to receive them. Wow, huh? That's a lot. In Vajrayana Buddhism and Bhakti Yoga, people visualize their own guru or teacher as Buddha, and they see no other Buddha but that their teacher or their master, and everything the master says and does, they take it as if it's the Buddha saying it, and so that's a form of yoga, actually. So let's go ahead and do our chanting. Charlie, are you going to do the shrine? Refuge in the 3 jewels. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows